Story 1. To paraphrase Alexander Hamilton, there are not enough words in the English language to describe how much I want to hit you with a chair. Story 2. In a performance review, I described the contributions of an engineer as follows. This team would be significantly more productive if you allowed him to work remotely. Story 3. You are unpleasant to be around. The amount of self-reflection I have witnessed in people after that statement is remarkable. Story 4. We Germans are pretty creative in this department. You might have swung a little too close to the wall as a kid. You've got room temperature intelligence. You seem to have no luck when thinking. You're like the black light in a daylight shop. Not utterly useless, but the things we see in your vicinity aren't looking good. You look like someone who preheats a microwave. How can he know what he's thinking before he hears what he's saying? You're the human equivalent of a participation prize. You couldn't spill water out of a boot even if the instructions were on its sole. When he leaves our company, Mr. X will leave a gap that will completely substitute for him. I would admit you're right, but we'd both be wrong. When you give a helping hand, it's as if to let go. Mental low flyer, synapse cemetery. Your head's only reason for existing is to prevent rain from falling into your throat. And there's plenty more. Story 5. Churchill, when accused of being drunk by a society madam, replied, I may be drunk, but in the morning I shall be sober, and you will still be ugly. Story 6. Who is this person? It implies that not only are they a clown, but they are not even one of the better-known clowns. Story 7. Were you born on a highway? Most accidents happen there. The birth certificate issued to you was an apology from the abortion center. Story 8. If brains were gunpowder, you wouldn't have enough to blow your nose. Oh, you're here. That's unfortunate. Is it hard being that foolish? Or does it come naturally? Story 9. You're like a software update. Nobody ever asked for you, and yet here you are, taking up space and wasting our time. You're the human version of a loading screen, full of hype, but lacking substance. Story 10. I remembered Bob Dylan on his radio show sharing these Jewish curses that Tom Waits learned about. Hey Bob, it's Tom. Here's a little morsel of information. The Jewish people have always had a penchant for colorful cursing. Here are some of the most famous Jewish curses. May God call the tune, and may your enemies play the music. May you lose your faith, and may you marry a pious woman. May all your teeth fall out except one, which should remain for a toothache. May you grow like an onion with your head in the ground and your feet in the air. May you have a good long sleep, and may your dreams be only of your troubles. May you be the proof that man can endure anything. May your wife eat matzahs in bed, and may you roll in the crumbs. Story 11. I lived in the South for a while and soon learned that bless your heart was not necessarily a blessing. Story 12. I like to ask people simple questions about their cars, such as the color, the number of cylinders, and the type of oil they use. Then, I respond with a dismissive sound to whatever answer they give me. It may not be an actual insult, but they definitely feel insulted. Story 13. I once heard a YouTuber rage against a non-playable character opponent in Wii Sports Resort basketball, and he said something along the lines of, Helen Keller has a better vertical than you, which is absolutely devastating in my opinion. Story 14. If I wanted to harm myself, I would climb your ego and jump to your intelligence quotient. Please stop talking. You are lowering the intelligence quotient of the entire block. Story 15. Someone once called me a rat on legs. I had to clarify what they meant because rats are on legs. They meant human legs. I think I would have just preferred the original version, honestly. Story 16. Not all these insults count, but most of them do. Story 17. My cousin told a disrespectful person on a field trip in our valley, you have the survival skills and respect of a drunk tourist. We are Hawaiian and live in Hawaii. Story 18. Watch Abbott Elementary. Ava has the best jokes, and the show is all PG, with the exception of one PG-13 episode. I also live in Pennsylvania, so it may just be Philadelphia humor. Story 19. All that cosmetic surgery, and look how you still are inside. You can't change that. I said that to my relative who treated my mother poorly after she had passed away. Story 20. I saw this one in the wild the other day. I will generate an image of me having intercourse with your mother. I felt secondhand defeat. Story 21. You have amazing talent, but because of that, you never try and often put in minimal effort, which leads to disappointment. Story 22. You were too close to the wall when you were a baby. You're not thinking clearly. Story 23. You seem to know exactly how many blister packs of Sudafed can be acquired from a stolen Rolex. Story 24. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you talking to me? I was pretending not to hear anything you just said. It's very non-confrontational, but so dismissive at the same time. Story 25. In French, telling someone that he is very kind can imply that he is foolish. Similarly, when you tell a baby's parents that their little treasure is charming, it can mean that he is not attractive. You cannot lie, but you also cannot speak the truth directly. Story 26. I cannot remember the comedian who said it, but it went something like this. Who is this clown? This is the best insult because it not only implies that the target is a clown, but also that they are not even one of the better-known ones. Story 27. Common sense is not a flower that blooms in everyone's garden. You are a disappointment. You could fall into a bucket of distractions and still come up with an undesirable outcome. Story 28. One friend said to a coworker, "Your brain is as smooth as your philtrum." I love it. It not only implies stupidity but also suggests generational stupidity. Insults are generally given for immediate effect, but I picture some person going home at the end of the day and not even remembering the words. I also smile at the thought of someone looking it up later and then it sinks in. Story 29. Mongrel. Story 30. Several years ago, my son told some trash talkers he beat in company of heroes to eat a sandwich, you're bad. I have no idea what that means, but we still laugh about it years later. Story 31. My favorite, just based on its absurdity, is tell your mother to trim her toenails. For some reason, it feels offensive. Story 32. I always find the most insulting thing is to just smile, laugh, and walk away. They do not matter and could not bother you in the slightest. Story 33. You will need to introduce yourself to your neighbor soon, or find a way to familiarize yourself with the neighborhood when someone is behaving suspiciously. Story 34. Well, that's about it. That's how it ends. But remember this, my friends. You may think you're knowledgeable, but you're not. In fact, you don't know anything. Story 35. Winston Churchill was an expert in insults. One example occurred when Churchill was accused by Bessie Braddock, a Labour politician, of being drunk. The exchange went something like this. Bessie: Winston, you are drunk. Winston: My dear, you are ugly, but tomorrow I shall be sober, and you will still be ugly. I compiled a list of notable quotes. 1. He had delusions of adequacy. Walter Kerr. 2. He has all the virtues I dislike and none of the vices I admire. Winston Churchill. 3. I have never killed a man, but I have read many obituaries with great pleasure. Clarence Darrow. 4. He has never been known to use a word that might send a reader to the dictionary. William Faulkner about Ernest Hemingway. 5. Poor Faulkner. Does he really think big emotions come from big words? Ernest Hemingway about William Faulkner. 6. Thank you for sending me a copy of your book. I'll waste no time reading it. Moses Hoddes. 7. I didn't attend the funeral, but I sent a nice letter saying I approved of it. Mark Twain. He has no enemies but is intensely disliked by his friends. Oscar Wilde. 9. I am enclosing 2 tickets to the first night of my new play. Bring a friend, if you have one. George Bernard Shaw to Winston Churchill. 10. Cannot possibly attend the first night. Will attend the second if there is one. Winston Churchill in response. 11. I feel so miserable without you. It's almost like having you here. Stephen Bishop. 12. He is a self-made man and worships his creator. John Bright. 13. I've just learned about his illness. Let's hope it's nothing trivial. Irvin Cobb, 13. He is not only dull himself, he is the cause of dullness in others. Samuel Johnson, 15. He is simply a shiver looking for a spine to run up. Paul Keating, 16. He loves nature in spite of what it did to him. Forrest Tucker, 17. Why do you sit there looking like an envelope without any address on it? Mark Twain, 18. His mother should have thrown him away and kept the stork. Mae West, 19. Some cause happiness wherever they go, others whenever they go. Oscar Wilde, 20. He uses statistics as a drunken man uses lampposts, for support rather than illumination. Andrew Lang, 21. He has Van Gogh's ear for music. Billy Wilder, 22. I've had a perfectly wonderful evening, but I'm afraid this wasn't it. Groucho Marx, 23. The exchange between Winston Churchill and Lady Astor. She said, "If you were my husband, I'd give you poison." He replied, "If you were my wife, I'd drink it." 24. He can compress the most words into the smallest idea of any man I know. Abraham Lincoln, 25. There's nothing wrong with you that reincarnation won't cure. Jackie Leonard, 26. They never open their mouths without subtracting from the sum of human knowledge. Thomas Brackett Reed, 27. He inherited some good instincts from his Quaker forebears, but by diligent hard work, he overcame them. James Reston about Richard Nixon, 28. Winston Churchill and Lady Astor. The story goes that at dinner one night, he made a crude remark, and Lady Astor said, "Mr. Churchill, you are drunk." Churchill supposedly replied, "And Lady Astor, you are ugly, but in the morning I shall be sober." 29. Harry Truman told Churchill he found Clement Attlee to be a modest man. Churchill replied he had much to be modest about. Another Churchill response, "You should be ashamed of your enormous belly, Winston. If it were on a woman, she'd be pregnant." It was, and she is. Story 36. If I threw a stick out the window, would you fetch it? You got splinters in the windmills of your mind. I borrowed this from some media source. Story 37. You see what you are doing right now? Your behavior? This is why you do not have friends. You are without a doubt the most unpleasant person I have ever known. Story 38. I have had multiple friends who described past partners and complained about each one. My response was always, "Do you know what all of those people have in common? You." Story 39. You are a brainless, turnip-shaped, garlic-eating, dirty rotten slob. Story 40. Wisdom is chasing you, but you are faster. I bet your parents changed the subject when you are brought up. Story 41. I miss the good old days, the ones before I met you. You would struggle to pour water out of a boot if the instructions were printed on the heel. And a personal favorite, your intelligence quotient is at freezing temperature. Story 42. A woman once said to Winston Churchill, "If you were my husband, I would put poison in your tea." To which he replied, "If you were my wife, I would drink it." Story 43. I say stop shouting like a fishwife to any loud woman in the calmest voice possible. It is very effective. I have seen girls literally combust at this. I am 53 years old and have used this a few times with other mothers when children have caused distress. Story 44. What did you get your mom or dad for Mother's or Father's Day? You should give them an apology for how you turned out. Story 45. What is the point of you? I heard that once on a British program, and my soul broke for the character it was directed at. Story 46. I worked with someone who complained to a coworker that she never received a compliment from him. His response was, "You don't sweat much for a larger girl." Story 47. I believe you would find it challenging to win Student of the Month, even if you were an only child being homeschooled. Story 48. I once heard this said in jest by a friend of mine. The recipient was his work buddy. I cannot fathom the depths of your shallowness. Story 49. It must have been a sad day when you left the abortion clinic. Xbox live chats were quite wild back then. Story 50. To insult someone and make them feel offended, just ask them why they look like that and appear genuinely confused. Story 51. There's a guy in my friend group who constantly boasts about how handsome he is and how he has the best hair and looks. He was showing off in our group chat about his new haircut, and I quipped, "How long did it take you to find someone to take a picture for your barber?" He did not like that. The comment was accurate. Story 52. Understanding has been swift, but you've always been quicker. Story 53. I tend to gravitate towards using "your mother is a hamster and your father smells of elderberries," but you have to put a little bit of a French accent on it. Story 54. My go-to response is, "I have been called worse by bigger people than you." Nobody seems to know how to respond to that. Story 55. I am glad you made a point of not discussing things you do not understand. However, that limits your conversational ability significantly. Story 56. The best part of you ran down your mother's leg at birth. If ignorance was bliss, then you must be the happiest person I will ever know. If wisdom comes from the heart, then I should go get the shock paddles. Step away. You are emitting waves of stupidity. Story 57. Once I saw a man at a football game with a poster that said, "Lubbock has no trees." It still makes me chuckle. Story 58. From Rugrats, I remember to this day, if brains were gasoline, you wouldn't have enough to power a motorcycle to go around the outside of a penny. Story 59. An escort has more self-respect than you, as they are compensated for their services while you offer yours for free. Story 60. The most savage insult I threw that made women cry and men turn red was "grow up," and this was directed at adults. Story 61. Dirty Mouth Test 37. You son of a biscuit-eating bulldog, doo-doo head cootie queen, pickle you kumquat, you Hoboken. Story 62. My ninth grade school counselor said I lacked a foundation in regards to schooling and therefore needed to be placed in special classes, even though it was not necessary. I had to negotiate to be allowed to pursue a college path. She called me stupid. Story 63. You don't matter. There is even a meme highlighting how insignificant people are. Story 64. You couldn't pour water out of a boot if the instructions were on the heel. Is one I really like. I use a slightly more appropriate version myself, but this version meets your guidelines. Story 65. When I worked in retail, calling anyone over the age of 40 rude made them very upset. Additionally, pointing out how self-righteous someone is often silenced them quickly. Story 66. You are a human with tennis elbow. You are like a pizza burn on the roof of the world's mouth. You are the opposite of a hero. Story 67. Well, the days of me not taking you seriously have certainly come to an end. I get the distinct impression you weren't burdened with an overabundance of education. Yes, Firefly. A friend refers to those coworkers as Mogadon. Apparently, this drug was described in British medical literature as a short-term, slow-acting sedative. Story 68. Two cannibals are eating you. One says, "Does this taste funny to you?" The other replies, "No, it doesn't." Story 69. Laugh at what they say to you. That ticks them off and you didn't have to say a word. If all else fails, say, "Okay, you might want to stop speaking and save some oxygen for the rest of us." If they're overweight, say, "You're the reason why the ozone layer is becoming thinner." Or, "It feels like a magnitude 11 earthquake with every step you take." If they're thin, say, "Make sure to stay away from the toothpicks. I might pick you up by accident." If they're wearing makeup, say, "Cute talk, but your words are as fake as your looks." If they think they're all that, say, "If you're the god, king, alpha, or superior, then I must be the owner of the universe." If none of these work, say, "Oh, sorry, I stopped listening when you started talking because there was nothing important to take in. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye."